Good evening, good evening. Once again, my name is Susan from Phoenix Wisdom, healing your grief. I hope that you've had a good day today. I hope that whatever you have been doing, it's been productive. And I hope that if you have recently had a loss, then first of all, I'd like to say I'm very sorry for your loss. And I hope that you give yourself time to just go through the motions. So once again, I thought I would cover today basically constantly being busy when you're in grief. When you constantly allow yourself to be busy when you're going through a grieving process. Quite often, this is a trauma response. And basically what happens is one of the ways of deflecting from allowing yourself to feel your grief pain is when you're constantly busy. And basically what it does is by being busy, it stops you from feeling the emotions associated with your grief, and it stops you from feeling the real, feelings of loss. And basically you mask it by keeping yourself constantly busy. Usually it's a trauma response, and usually it's a way to deflect from allowing yourself to feel the hurt and feel the pain. As I covered in the video yesterday, one of the things that is very much a common practice in going through, when you've got, loss and grief, whether it be down to a loved one passing away, or basically through a loss of a relationship, or a loss of a job, or a sense of a loss of identity where something has changed within you. The usual response is for many people to just keep themselves constantly busy, because it's a way of avoiding the pain. Whilst it's good to be productive, it doesn't necessarily help, because what happens, it stifles down the pain, the grief pain, and it stifles that in your body, and it keeps it stuck in your body. And quite often as a result, what happens is it means then that there is unresolved grief that can stay stuck in the mind, the body and spirit, and in the actual body. The important thing is, when you do feel a sense of loss, is to allow yourself to get in touch with it, and to give yourself small manageable goals that you can manage in any given moment in time, rather than trying to constantly keep busy by just doing, because essentially what will happen eventually is you will crash, and then it will be harder for you to pick yourself up, along with what your body goes through. And one of the things that I sort of looked at in terms of the grief is that when you are going through grief, your body naturally starts to release a stress hormone called cortisol, and basically your body gets flooded with this cortisol, and that's the stress hormone. And then what happens is your body goes into that sort of defense mechanism to try and keep yourself safe. And usually what happens is, when one keeps themselves constantly busy, along with the stress, the hormone cortisol, along with the stress, then it basically just can overload the body and basically make you feel worse. It's really important to allow yourself to sit and be present with your grief, and sit and be present with how you feel. One of the things that might help, although, you might think, how could that help? But one of the things that might help is to journal, is to write down your thoughts and feelings. And of course, you're going to go through the various stages of grief as you go through the process of coming to terms with your loss. And basically the stages of grief, first of all, you've got, shock, and then you have denial. And then you have, you have shock, you have denial, there is depression, there is negotiation, and there is anger. And basically what you will do over a period of time, you'll bounce around between those different phases of the grief process. Then it's not completely, you won't not go through it in a very succinct way. It's a unique way. And you could go from stage 1 of grief to, stage 3 of grief at any given time, and bounce around from the different stages. Remember, you're going to be going through very much a stage of an emotional roller coaster, and it is hard. It is hard. It really is hard. But it's important for you to allow yourself to feel those feelings, because by feeling those feelings, you're allowing your body to be present in its pain, and you're allowing your body to be present in how it feels, and you're not trying to fix it. Because usually the common practice is people usually try and fix it, and they usually try and make it better very quickly, and they feel that they have to try and rush through the grief process, when basically that is not the case. If you try and rush a healing grief process too quickly, then it's going to be counterproductive. It's going to be counterproductive. And there is no doubt that it hurts. And it's okay for it to hurt. It needs to hurt, because it's a loss, it's a pain. It's something that was important to you. It's something that was significant to you. It's something that meant something. And it isn't something just to be discarded like it didn't. So when you are constantly allowing yourself to be busy, when you're in your period of grieving, in the beginning of your loss, there's usually a trauma response as a way of coping, as a way of deflecting you away and pushing yourself away from allowing yourself to feel the very painful and very uncomfortable feelings of loss. So I thought that I would also come with some healing messages like I did yesterday. And so I've devised some of my own, and some of them I have got, which I have with my oracle cards. So I'm going to pull a couple of the grieving stages that you can expect to go through. And I just thought that information is helpful. Knowledge is power. And sometimes when we don't always understand what's going on with us, and sometimes when we don't always understand how we're feeling, what we're supposed to feel, and remember, it's not necessarily finite of how one is supposed to feel, because yes, you can have a guideline of the grief stages, but basically everybody's grief experience is going to be unique to themselves, and they're going to have a unique experience with their own grief journey. I've just come up with a message here, and it's called internalizing. Have you internalized your pain? And where are you perhaps carrying other people's wounds? Grief brings up such a lot in families when one is going through grief. And sometimes grief pain can be projected onto others, or, grief pain can be projected onto you from others. And that's usually because of the pain associated and because it hurts. And sometimes it's easy to deflect, and sometimes it's easy to project, because it's another way, it's another coping strategy of denying yourself, of allowing yourself to be in that space of pain. So I will just pass some messages on for you. And yeah, so okay, let's have a look. Okay. one of the things that might happen whilst you're going through grief is that sometimes people go into their shell and people go into a cocoon. And what happens is that sabotages connections with others, because the natural, the natural reaction to when one feels pain is sometimes to withdraw. And it's a coping mechanism. And so, you might want to look at where you are, might be pushing people away because you're in pain with your grief. And usually, sometimes people just want to help. Although quite often I have found, especially in Western culture, people's responses to grief is very different. And basically what happens is they usually don't know what to say. They usually don't know how to support people that are hurting and that have just lost somebody that they love. And usually there are such statements, toxic positivity statements, that you'll be okay. You'll be all right in a little while. You'll be okay in a couple of months. Those sort of sweeping statements are hardly conducive to feeling supported when you are going through grief. In fact, they just compound things and make things worse. But that's usually because people don't know what to say. And it's usually because people just don't know how to respond, because the usual response is many people don't get into contact with their pain when they've experienced a loss, because it's easier, because we are encouraged along with our emotions when we are displaying heightened emotions and hurt emotions. We are encouraged to basically dumb them down and stuff them down and, shove them away, because it's easier and because people find it difficult to sit in the pain. That's what happens. So I thought that I would, just continue with some messages. And so crying is not a weakness, but a strength. And if you've been brought up where you have been told that crying, you need to stop your noise, or you need to be quiet, or what you're crying for, then you would have internalized the message that crying is not okay. You would have internalized the message that crying is weak. But in fact, nothing could be further from the truth. Crying is not weak. Crying is a strength, and crying is healing. And it's the body's natural defense mechanism to express hurt, to express pain, and to be able to allow your body to express that through what I call liquid tears. Tears are the liquid emotions that the heart sometimes cannot speak. And tears are okay. In fact, they're cathartic, they're healing. They produce some of their own, hormones in themselves, and it's healing. It's not a weakness, it's a strength. And you need to let those go. Let them pour. Let them pour down your face, especially if that's what you need to do. Especially if that's what you need to do. And basically, when you're going through a loss, especially if it's been traumatic and unexpected, try not to blame yourself for your grief. Be compassionate with yourself. Give yourself the compassion that you would so readily express to a loved one or a close friend or a family member, that you would readily come out with a response. Give yourself the same compassion and the same due diligence in relation to that. Give yourself compassion. Yeah? So it's really important. And one of the things that I'm covering at the moment is I'm covering general grief as a whole, but I'm also covering heartbreak. I'm also covering, twin flame heartbreak, because the twin flame relationship is a very challenging relationship, but it's a challenging relationship because it affords and stretches each individual for growth. And there is a certain element of grief that you go through in relation to the twin flame relationship, especially when you go through a period where either of you are going through ghosting or stonewalling because the communication has broken down. It can produce its own pain and it's very hard. But in my videos, I'm covering all sorts of grief. There's many types of grief. You've got grief through, heartbreak. You've got grief through losing somebody to ill health and sickness. You've got grief when somebody has an accident. You've got grief when somebody naturally, organically passes away to the next transition of their life. You've got, unfortunately, you've got loss of a child, and grief is a very common theme for everybody. But everybody's experience with grief and how they respond to that grief is going to be extremely unique. And one of the things is, I've written these out as part of the healing aspect. And grief fact, you will have moments of fortitude and moments of strength. There will be some days that you'll feel that you can climb Mount Everest and you can accomplish all the things that you've set yourself to do. And yet another day you can feel absolutely immobilized by grief, and you can feel completely like you haven't got the willpower, the energy, or the strength to do anything. It's really, really important to ride the tidal waves of grief, to allow yourself and give yourself permission to flow with each day in accordance to how you feel in each given moment. When you start to place too many expectations on yourself, you actually make it harder for yourself, and you actually make the grief journey and the healing journey harder because of the extra pressure and the extra expectations. Yeah. And so stage 4, I've jumped to stage 4 quickly of grief, is depression, and that's lack of motivation and isolation. You might feel very much if you're at stage 4 of the grief process. However, once again, as I've said earlier on in the video, that sometimes they may have been listed as depression is stage 4, but you can get it at any stage of the grief journey. And you may just feel some days where you actually feel quite low and quite depressed because of what you're going through, and that's perfectly natural. And so I thought that I would look at the chakras, and sometimes it's good to just pull a card to have a look at what chakra would be a benefit to work on. And then I've got some information in relation to the crystals and also the angels associated with some of the grief process. And then I shall pull some cards in relation to what you need to let go of, also what you need to surrender, and basically what divine door that you're going to be walking through. And these are just messages of comfort on top of the information that I'm sharing with you in relation to the grief. Yeah. So the root chakra has come up, and the root chakra is associated with the color red, and that's one's base, that's one's security. And it's interesting enough that when you're going through grief, you're going to feel very, very you're going to feel unanchored. You're going to be pulled away, and you're not going to feel very solid. You're suddenly going to feel very sort of like a fish out of water, like your security is going to be pulled out from under you. You're going to feel unsafe. You're going to feel wobbly. You're not going to feel okay. And that's perfectly normal. So the root chakra is the color associated with red, and that's associated with family and social belonging, safety and security. So you are going to feel a little bit unsecure, so to speak, because especially when you're going through a loss, because everything that you have known has suddenly become different. So please, once again, be gentle with yourself whilst you go through that, and try to understand with a sense of love and a sense of compassion what you're going through, and be gentle with yourself, because it's really, really important. And so I thought I would pull some information regarding the crystals associated with grief. And rose quartz is a very common one that is generic. Rose quartz is the healing, It's the crystal that heals and grounds and supports emotions. So once again, you may want to carry a rose quartz around with you, not for you to stifle and squash your grief feelings, but just to help you feel a little bit anchored and feel a little bit supported. And that's really, really important. I thought that I would let you know what some of the angels, archangels that are associated with grief, if you are that way inclined, if you're of a spiritual inclination. If not, then, you know, remember, anything that I'm saying on this video is for you to take with what resonates. I'm certainly not trying to force anything on anybody. Everybody has the free will and the free choice to take what resonates and let go of what doesn't. And I'm just sharing basically what may help. Basically, Archangel Michael is the angel to tap into, to help you to support and accept any change that you're going through. Archangel Michael is one of the most common ones. He's the most, the one that is the go-to. He's always strong. He's always there. He's the anchor. And he is also the Archangel of Sunday. So if you've been born on a Sunday, then he will be your Archangel. So that would be something for you to consider. And so what I thought I would do is I will look at, what card in terms of, to what you need to release today, or, looking at what you need to cover. Remember, information helps. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Sometimes I think that when we're going through things, if we can understand it, and we can understand exactly why we feel the way we do, sometimes I think it makes that transition a little bit easier. Sometimes one of the challenges is when you don't quite understand, why you're feeling the way that you do, and it makes it harder because you're trying to put the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together. You're trying to understand exactly what's happening, why it's happening, on top of what you're already feeling from your loss, and you can feel quite overwhelmed, most definitely. So what do I want to do here? Okay, I feel drawn to this one, so I'm going to, and basically it's asking you, it's going to be very difficult to imagine this for a moment, and this is called trusting in life, and that can be quite hard when you're going through a grief process. Quite hard to trust, because you can lose a sense of faith. You can lose a sense of why should I trust in anything anymore when I feel so hurt, when I feel so let down, when all I've ever done is this and ever done and that. And you will get moments, what I call pity party moments, because that's natural, because that's part of the denial, that's part of the journey of coming to terms with what you've been going through. And what it's actually saying is today I will trust that the events occurring in my life are not random. My experiences aren't mistakes, and the universe, my higher power, and life are not picking on me. I'm going through exactly what I need to go through to learn something valuable, something that will prepare me for the joy and love I'm seeking. One of the things that I have discovered in my journey is one of the greatest teachers that we can ever have, and that is that of pain. One of the greatest things is pain is one of our greatest teachers. It is huge and it's phenomenal what it teaches us once we've actually transitioned and got out of the really dark side of it. And once you actually allow yourself to process things and stand back objectively and subjectively, you can begin to realize exactly what that was teaching you, what that was telling you, what that was showing you. And remember, we're all here to learn. That's what it's all about. That's why we're here on having a soul experience, because the whole idea is to learn from what we go through and, grow through it. And that's what it's all about. And so I'm going to look at what you need to let go of today. And that's the what I call the Let's Surrender cards. You all need to surrender something at some point. And yeah, let's have a look. Okay, this one says, surrender your addictions. Addictions bring their own pain in their own way. Surrender your addictions. Whether you're addicted to substances, food, people, sex, or overworking, take action to begin to heal the addiction and replace it with healthier alternatives. Once again, I believe that ties in with what I talked about in the beginning of the video, and that is doing. Sometimes we just need to allow ourselves to just be and not do. That's what I think. You know, it's a coping mechanism when you constantly keep yourself busy. And, you know, so yeah. So the next one is let go, and then I'll go through what divine door can be looked at today. And these are just messages of comfort. And I've done this, I do these videos in my own unique way, my own style. I bring a little bit of what I do in my own unique way. Let go of the old tales and write your own adventure story. Once you get through your grief and once you get through your pain, what story will you then have to write? What story will you then have to share that you can rewrite, that you can do differently, that you can share with others to support them in their moment of need? We're all in this together.